Hello and welcome, listeners, viewers, wherever you are locked in, day, noon, night, afternoon, morning, wherever you're listening from. It is the End Product Podcast, episode 81. As always, joined by my sparring partner, Quinny. We're back from injury, Quinny. The two of us have had some weeks out, haven't we, with the flu? I was knocked out really bad last week, and you were the week prior. So it's actually nearly a month since we jumped on last on the podcast.
Yeah, the last time, it was just before the turn of the year. We got the last little bit of end product in of 2023. And, on that episode where we're talking about, going into the new year, and, what might happen and, what had been quite good over the last year, as well as making reference to this, there was this little murmur back then. And I was like, I don't know where it's coming from, but I don't like it. And it was this little murmur that's been everywhere ever since, about the blooming thresholds and everything else in between. So that's not going to be on the agenda today, is it, Stish?
No. I think as anyone who does sort of consume content from the Sorare stratosphere, I think that's been done to death, hasn't it, Quinny? I think we spoke about it on your live stream a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
In the kind of like injury period that we were both experiencing. But yeah, I think we kind of discussed it there. I think it's been done, isn't it? I think we've got a few people in the chat also already agreeing with us that they're fed up of hearing about it. So yeah, we'll steer clear of that today, I think. And as per usual, let's kick things off, Quinny. Obviously, it's been a few weeks. Have you had any end product in these kind of like strange winter months? Anything worth reporting since we last spoke?
Well, there's been a few wins actually. This little winter break of I've maybe averaged about 2 or 3 lineups most game weeks. Maybe in a big game week, I've got 4 or 5 if I'm lucky. But I've had little bits and pieces here and there. I finally got myself another super rare goalkeeper, which I've been speaking about in some other places as well, which has opened up a 4th team for me at that level now. And the boy Mandanda, so that'll be cool. Danjuma I won as well in that time. He's moving to Leon today, feels like, or tomorrow maybe. Which is fun, but nothing major, nothing that exciting. In terms of end product, I think the main thing that I was eager to get under the bonnet with, and especially get stuck into on the podcast today, is obviously the new show in town is obviously Rivals at the moment. So one thing I thought, Stish, I would throw at you. Obviously, you can let us know about all your winter break end products as well. But I did a Rivals thing at the weekend where I tried to catch all the kind of primetime matches all at the one go, and it was quality. It was so much fun, watching games with all the chat. We've all got cards, we've all got teams, and we're mainly caring about the arenas and the win streaks because you're trying to get boxes on the go and everything else. And there was some, we're all challenging each other, and it's like, oh, I'm beating this guy, this guy's beating everyone, or we've seen the substitutes happen and all the rest of it. It really added another layer into the game week, which was good fun. I got the number 1 box, which I'm sure everyone's had by this point. Tickets, doesn't it?
That's pretty much what I got. Yeah, I got tickets in mine as well, which is fine. I think the product's mostly for the onboarding, isn't it? Trying to get people involved, and I think in terms of like the more sort of casual users, it is quite easy to get to grips with. I think there's still quite a little bit of it that goes a little bit unexplained. Even for me, like someone who knows how to sort of find my way around the website, obviously whether you're using it on the app, I think it's designed mostly to be used on the app, isn't it? I think that's the point of it. But it is still a little bit clunky. Like I think for me, like in terms of like the user interface, the whole like my lineups and lobby, I think they need to change the name from lobby and my lineups to like upcoming game week and current game week, because it's like that's basically what it is. It's like here's your live scores and what's happened in the past and right now, and here's like getting ready for next week or the games that are upcoming, and lobby and my lineups, and then going into like pro or rivals and match history, all that kind of stuff is a little bit, but I'm sure these are things that they're iron out over time. I think it's good to see the product up and running. Feedback seems to be good. There's a lot of engagement on social media. A lot of the clubs been posting about it. I don't know if you saw, Quinny, but I've noticed a few reposts and bits and bobs on my Twitter feed today from particularly the Spanish club. Seems to be the case that they've kind of like they're launching it via like the La Liga partnership more than anywhere else at the moment. Keep seeing Tom Nellis
France as well, I think, is meant to be in this kind of launch. so I think one of them tweeted that, maybe Nicholas, or it might have been Dan or somebody, but I think somebody had mentioned it somewhere that this is like the rivals switch on that we've had in terms of all that stuff. It's mainly aimed in the Spanish and like the French kind of spaces in that sense, which is cool. Look forward to it coming to the UK probably after our winter break finishes. You know, the Premier League is kind of staggered. Scotland's totally away. Scotland comes back for cup games this weekend, but it's not the same, obviously, for SO5.
Yeah, it might be something we see in a few weeks, I think, maybe for the UK side of things. But yeah, it's been good. I think been using it quite a bit through AFCON. Just having to go like bit of daytime action on this Sorare app. It's always a bit of fun. But yeah, do you know what? I just realised I completely skipped. I did have a bit of M products since we last spoke.
Nice.
I did actually I managed to win All-Star Rare Plus one week, and I picked up Joshua Kimmich. I don't think we've reported that.
Yeah, of course you did. Yeah, I remember that.
I'm just looking. I'm like, yeah, I don't think we spoke about that, but yeah, I had a big win. Picked up a Joshua Kimmich in like a really random midweek, where like sometimes your lineup just hits. I think I only had like 3 lineups in, so I had like one good one, but I didn't expect to win. But I thought, that could scrape its way into the cash prizes, like the top 20 or something like that. And it just managed to hit, and I got lucky with everyone else's results not really coming in how they might have hoped. And one of Joshua Kimmich. So like having won Kane earlier in the season, I've now got Kimmich, Kane, Musiala, and so that was my conundrum in the last game week where we had quite a lot of fixtures on. Bayern had a big fixture, a good-looking fixture as well, and I thought, right, this is where I think for the first time I've really ever for me, I've got like a strong, like a stack of a team that like is dominant. Like not obviously you've probably experienced this with Celtic at like in the SPFL fixtures. Most of my sort of like collections or stacks that I've got are like little pairs or triples from like a mid-table team, usually not one of the sort of dominant forces in their league. So now I've got this sort of Bayern half stack at my disposal. It was really interesting experiencing the sort of lineup building, having that there, knowing, if you break it up, does it make sense? Like, does it make sense using Musiala in U23 when you've got Kimmich and Kane that should probably be in Champ or in All-Star? So I decided, actually, I'm going to go really strong in Champ. And I put the 3 of them in a team together in Champ, which did manage to win me a card this weekend. I'll get to that in a minute. However, because they played first in the weekend, I think their fixture was the Friday, so it's one of the first games of the game week opening. It was really interesting to see the way that the league table straight away, like even before kickoff, it's like you can see where you sit next to everyone else who's running a Bayern stack. Yeah. And straight away, I'm like, I've got Kane, Kimmich, and Musiala. And Musiala's like maxed out on XP. I think Kane's at about 10%. Kimmich is on about 6 because of the collection bonus, but first time I've used him. So I'm thinking, I've got probably like an okay, but a very expensive. That's not a cheap stack, right? As far as having Bayern cards, those are 3 of the main ones you want, right? Maybe Sané's another one you'd want at the moment. But as soon as the games are announced, I look at leaderboards and there is literally like 20 other Bayern like stacks or like partial stacks above me in the leaderboard. So straight away before a ball's kicked, I'm like, it's hard for me to see a way to compete against other Bayern stacks with a Bayern stack. So I've always thought, like that's kind of like why I like to mix my cards up, and I've never really gone all out on the stacks. Maybe a defensive half and an attacking half. Sometimes I can do that depending on fixtures, that kind of stuff. But now it's like, great, I've got some really good cards, some useful scorers, but I'm not sure how useful they are against other collectors who have the big collection bonuses, the maxed out cards. I think my only kind of saving grace at the moment is I have got a Kane, and Kane has a bit less of a large kind of
supply.
So that was interesting because it's really putting a headache. It's giving me a headache at the minute, Quinny. And I don't know. Obviously, you must experience this on a weekly basis, thinking, "Where's McBride put in his collection? Where's?" Because there's so many Celtic collectors who might be playing Challenger, who might be playing All Star, and now I found myself right in your shoes. I experienced it firsthand for the first time. It's a lovely problem to have, but yeah, I mean, any tips, any advice on like what's your thought process when you look at your lineups and you know you're going up against other collectors of that team?
I think when it's like rares, it's a little bit different to the kind of boat I'm in with Celtic, but I suppose it does kind of scale in different ways. But I think ultimately you're just never going to beat picking the best 5 guys. You know, like there's some Celtic stacks out there that will have players that's maybe less prevalent now. Obviously, Nicholas Kuhn's coming in. He's not got Celtic cards at the moment, but he does have cards. So sometimes you'll have like stacks out there. And I've got Scales at Aberdeen, you know, in defence, and originally had like a Yokohama Daisen and a Vissel Kobe Kyogo. There's still those cards floating around out there, if you get me. So it's more just about the best 5 in the team, you know. And with Bayern Munich, like part of the thing that normally is the appeal of those bigger teams, and sometimes Celtic is this team as well, is that 7 guys break 70 or 60 at least, you know, and then there's just less pressure on getting the combination correct to get in amongst it. But you still need to get the combination spot on if you're going to win something. You know, if you're going to really be the guy that's flying the flag, like, oh, this team won 5-0 and look where I'm sitting on the leaderboard. That person still nailed the 5, you know, regardless. But everyone else has got that cushion of, oh, well, I had the left back rather than the centre back and he scored 65, so that's okay, even though the centre back did 89 or whatever, you know. So that's more the way to think of it, if that makes sense. It doesn't really change the, you know, smashing the squad and, you know, making the most of it, because you're looking for the 2 guys that get 100 and then the 3 other guys that get the 70s, or obviously one of them with the goalkeeper. It's maybe almost unavoidable if you're doing the complete thing. Although I do, with my, like, I'll say this as well, by the way, my Celtic stack was way more successful before I got a Joe Hart into my gallery. Since I've had Joe Hart, I've won less stuff. Like, that is irrefutable. When I have Skrupski or Soria or whatever backing up my Celtic cards, I've normally done way better. So I'm going to die on that hill, that you really don't need the goalkeepers to match defenders. If anything, in a lot of cases, it's detrimental because you just it's a poor decision, you know, sometimes. Anyway, Joe Hart's fine. He still won me some stuff, but point still stands on that one. So I would probably take a little bit of that pressure off yourself, mate, in terms of, you know, all these other factors that go into it. Because that's just more the cushion it gives everyone that backs that situation, not necessarily the exact 5 that you're running.
Yeah, I'm just having a little look back at the rankings from that week, just to kind of remind myself of what was in and around me and what was above. And I think looking at what finished in those top spots in the end in that game week were actually not stacks, you know. So even though at the beginning of the game week it was like, oh, those stacks look better than mine, in the end, those that did run a full Bayern stack didn't actually end up finishing in those sort of like podium spots. It's still like a mixture. In the case of Champ Europe that week, YNWA won with Donnarumma, goalkeeper, Grimaldo, Cruz, Rodrigo, and Mbappe. So a bit of a mix there. 3 different fixtures to worry about. And I think, yeah, I mean, the noise is always about stacks, isn't it? Because I think the beauty of stacks is it's less research, isn't it? It's like, all right, if you kind of like get used to watching a team, you kind of know who's going to play where, you know what kind of fixture. Like for me, I've got quite a few Leverkusen cards, and I think we've spoken about it before. Like for me, it's normally like whether or not do I think Frimpong is going to have a high scoring game this game. Usually is the like, because he's one of those like. He's one of those players whose AA can really fluctuate, obviously based on Jules one, usually because he's a defensive card. If they're going to keep a clean sheet or not is another factor. But you know, he's going to get in those final thirds. He's going to make chances. He's probably going to have shots on goal. So he's in the mix for a decisive always in any fixture, I think. But it's more about obviously this weekend coming. I think they got Leipzig, and my thinking is he might not get as high up the pitch in this game as he's allowed usually, but you know, he's been playing more of a forward role than a defensive role in that team this season. So those are the kind of things I think when I look at like a Leverkusen, and I guess like if you are a stack player, it doesn't matter what team you're stacking. That's your kind of thought process, isn't it? I guess. And I mean, it probably is actually pretty rare that a full stack does win. I know people think that they win loads, but they don't often finish top, do they? And if they do, the top 5 places will be all people who've played the same stack, and the only difference will be the collection bonus or the XP or something like that. I think someone posted in the week. Obviously, there was only was it one Champ Euro fixture in the midweek this week, which was Juventus and Sassuolo, and I think the limited Champ Euro, the top 5 teams in it were all exactly the same lineup. The only difference was the XP. So the top player was like a top Juventus collector on the platform. And, that just goes to show why the collection bonus is actually important as we get more and more users running pretty much the same teams, as the supply is what it is. And you can go out and get the players that you want at the moment because it's fairly easy. But yeah, like we got Nanzo in the chat, and he's obviously well experienced in this kind of thing as well. And he says, and I'd agree with this, that stacks shine when there aren't many fixtures. Yeah. You only have to be on the right side of like of one fixture if there's like 4, right? So in this case, this week we had one Champ Euro fixture. You just have to pick the winner, and if you've got the stack of that team, you're laughing, aren't you? And I think the only time I've ever experienced that was with a random Velez fixture, which I ran. I didn't even run it in Champ America, but I think I had like 4 starters in Velez who ended up putting me in the rewards in All-Star. But I would agree with that. I think that's when it comes in. Like if you've got a full fixture list, as you see like that weekend where everything starts to open up after Christmas, definitely looking at Champ Euro, which was actually a really high scoring week as well. I managed to pull in 476 points last week. Nice. And I finished 14th. Like there's 2 scores over 500 in the podium last week. So very high scoring game week. But that managed to win me a tier 2. And on the subject of dud rewards and stuff like that, we always want to be kind of like missing one of those DMPs at the moment, didn't we? And I think I got really lucky again this week. I managed to pick up a Ruben Diaz as the reward. And I was really happy with that as a reward. I think Ruben Diaz is a great card to have. But again, you are playing Pep Roulette comes into play, doesn't it? A little bit. But I was happy with that one. And on the subject of end product, I also managed to pick up another FC Seoul reward in the U23 pool. Kang Seong-jin, who should have probably had a better season last season, found himself out of favour a little bit. But looking forward to seeing them next season. And I'll be in Seoul. I'm going to miss the kickoff though. The K-League fixtures will come out, Quinny, and they're going to be kicking things off the first weekend of March, and I'm going to be out there the weekend prior. So I'm not sure if I'm going to get any K-League action in while I'm in South Korea, sadly.
That's gotten so close as well for such a long journey.
I know, man. I'm definitely gutted, but I haven't had a look. But maybe there's some fixture. Maybe there's a friendly. Maybe there's a cup fixture that weekend or something. I'm gonna have a little look. But briefly on the subject of Korean football, I know we got a lot of Osmar fans in the chat as always, and we spoke of him on the podcast a few weeks back when he left, and was expected to move to Malaysia, wasn't he? Well, he's only gone and signed for the local rivals, Seoul Eland. So he's staying in Seoul, but he's playing for a team in the second tier instead, which is
not any better.
Unthinkable. But maybe I'll get to see Osmar in the flesh. Hopefully that maybe if they kick their fixtures off a weekend,
that'd be cool.
I might be able to go and do that. But I mean that would be nice. Get a bit of that. That would be like a proper Sorare experience during the trip.
Yeah, I agree.
Looking forward to that. But other than that, I've got a bit of China. Maybe I don't think we've got Chinese Super League for a few months yet. So I'm not. My hopes are not high for seeing any football on this trip, sadly.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, I think going into the weekends at the moment when it is like this, that's a kind of common theme, isn't it? Hopes are not high very regularly this time of year, so at least it's fitting.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to quite a lot of the leagues starting to open back up, aren't we? And I don't know about you, but I've been kind of getting ahead of myself on the lineup builder just to sort of see as and when things come available, especially when I'm looking at my super air options. You mentioned earlier that you managed to win another goalkeeper, which has opened up another super air option for you. Are you going to be strengthening in like your kind of super air collection now that you've got that extra opening there with a goalkeeper?
So no, I think this is like a good, probably a good thing to talk about. Because I know you've went through this in different ways, like through you built, building your Sorare club, and it's been a while since I've been in this kind of situation. But like when you're building your squad out, like as you know, when you're trying to compete to number one bag thresholds on the regular, because that's like base camp. The first thing that you want your club to be able to do is have a competitive 240 lineup, and then from there you try and get some superstars, you try and get some captains, you try and get some guys that can be something, and then you find what division you want to go and kind of compete in from there. But as you're doing that, the ideal thing is you're bulking your squad up, so you've got options, you've got different leagues covered for fixtures, or when they're all playing, you've got options, so you can pick the best guy each week, ideally, or whatever. And generally, you'll accumulate that depth in outfield way faster than in goals. And normally, like I've kind of used, like the goalkeeper is almost like the gatekeeper for what divisions I'm playing, how many divisions I'm playing, what level of divisions am I playing, etc. So, like previously, when my gallery was a lot bigger in terms of the head count, if I wanted to get a lot of ETH quickly, I would just sell a goalkeeper or something like that. Like you could just do that. They're very liquid. People always pay good money for them relative to the market. And then, but sometimes I would do that deliberately, knowing that, oh, if I sell this guy, then it means I can't play Champion Asia anymore, or I can't play Champion America anymore. But then what I've always told myself is then the knock-on effect is then all those cards now go into All-Star. Now we have get cap modes that are available, that kind of thing. So it should strengthen other areas by removing that kind of gatekeeper element. So I'm kind of on the reverse of that now, when I'm starting to build the club back up again over the last 6 to 7 months. And especially with the blue cards, the supers, the outfield has been getting broadened out. Like I've kind of got myself into this Girona collection by whatever, as well as all the other ones. I've just managed to accumulate Celtic cards or Spanish ones. I've got hundreds of Spanish cards, whatever. A few Premier League guys as well when they come on board. So I've been building that outfield, and a lot of the time when I've been building that outfield, the depth has been great to see the numbers going up. But the quality and depth, because of when I need to buy guys, when their L15 is orange or yellow, or when they are injured, or when I think they're still a player and no one else thinks they're a player anymore.
Best time to do it.
But I'm building depth of kind of, at the time, quite poor quality or questionable. And then it's like, oh, well, that guy's on form, so I've got one guy happening, and then can I surround him with some other pieces and make the most of it? Fortunately, now, just the way some things have shaken out, some of the guys that have been in the background are kind of coming back from injury or had a good season so far or whatever. But because that depth has been there, I've always got a lot of pressure on what cards do I actually pick this week. And the combinations have been tough for me to nail down. And that's the perfect time to add a goalkeeper. That's the perfect time to try a new division with what you've maybe got already, because a lot of your cards are going to be eligible for more than one thing. And in most cases, probably 3 things, if their cap isn't like 65 or 70 or something, if that makes sense. So it's really kind of opened the door for me. It doesn't force me to buy anything else, if you know what I mean, because organically I've just had that need of, I've actually got another full complement of players I could throw out, So it's a fun time for my club, FC Barcelona, in that sense, where it's growing. The depth is now kind of coming to the top, and these guys are playing, and I'm under pressure to use these cards, or I'm not really tempted to sell any of them, even though they're kind of active and playing, and I probably could sell some of them and turn that into something else. But like I've kind of mentioned as well in content quite a wee bit recently, is like with Sorare, a big part of it for me is like, it's these players I'm buying. Like, you can have that extra level of Sorare of like, oh, it's this exact card, which I kind of like as well. But for the most part, with my fantasy teams, it's like, this player is who I'm backing throughout playing Sorare. I'm going to own this card for however long. So I don't really give myself that pressure to sell if I've got an active player that I'm not utilizing, which I know a lot of people do. But it means then when you're in that position, when that goalkeeper does fall into your lap, all of a sudden, boom, and our team's up and running.
Yeah, I managed to win another goalkeeper actually in the week.
You love winning goalkeepers, but
I
so
know.
you're on the opposite end of the scale from me, where you just get goalkeepers as collateral constantly, you know.
I would absolutely love to win a super rare keeper that I could use. I could definitely do with a few options there at the moment. I've been struggling to figure out what to do. I think this weekend's the first weekend I've had 2 options in super rare goalkeeper for a long time. So yeah, it's opened up All Star. I haven't been able to play All Star super rare for a while because I've been making sure that I kind of get those thresholds in instead. And yeah, I've been kind of like keeping an eye on the market. I've put bids in a few times on super rare keepers, but I've been outbid on all of them. And I'm like, I'm trying to stay strict with what I want to spend on, and that goes across any scarcity as well. Like I'm looking at the price, I'm looking at the trend, I'm looking at the fixtures upcoming, and I kind of pick my price. And I'm like, that's my max bid. If it gets outbid, I'm not going back in, and I don't look at it. Whereas I used to get sucked into like bidding wars for a card, and I've been much better in the last few months at just avoiding that. But obviously I've had some really good wins as well, so I've been able to strengthen my gallery massively through tournament wins, which is, I think I'm in a position now that I've been trying to play myself into this position since I started the game. Really, like when I first came in, I was all about U23, trying to have cards that I can use for like 10 years and stuff like that. And now it's like I'm looking at how many lineups I can get that I genuinely think can push into like the top 20 maybe. And I've got at least 5 lineups, I think, most weekends now, where I'm like, that could do the top 20. I'm putting things that are like really strong, always going really strong into All-Star rare plus, and currently champ. I think having the cash prizes there is like the carrot in front of me to kind of like try and hit a cash spot if you can, and put a really strong lineup in. If my super rares aren't absolutely smashing, then they go into the cap modes in super rare before they go into like rare pro or rare plus or whatever we call it now. So and I think that strategy is working for me, in the sense that it might not mean that I win I'm not like maybe like podium threatening every week, but I have been lucky, and I've had a few where I've managed to scrape into those podiums. So you only need a couple of them, don't you? And it kind of like solidifies. You get your team going, get your rewards back in the mix. And yeah, I haven't sold too many rewards, because I think the ones I did sell were like those goalkeepers that felt like they were excess over what I needed. And I think one of the sales that comes to mind was Van der Voort. I sold a Van der Voort reward, didn't I, about 3 months ago, something like that, with the intention of replacing him with another U23 goalkeeper, because everything was looking a bit thin. Once Van der Voort moves next season to Leipzig, we don't even know if he's going to be a starter. I think he probably will be, but yeah, like I'm looking a bit uncertain for U23 goalkeepers, or at least I was. Anyway, since that's happened, and this is another thing I think where it's really important to have that patience. And, I've found myself in a position now where Maduka Okoye has managed to like find his way into the starting lineup in the Udinese. So I've got another U23 option right now who I didn't have. And it was unforeseeable that he would be of any use to me at the time. But also, news we've mentioned just off air, which I don't know how many people are familiar with now, but we've spoken a lot about Tanny, haven't we, on the podcast? Yeah. We're Tanny holders. He's obviously got to move back to Japan. He's going to be playing for the newly promoted Makita Zelvia next season. So straight now, like from the time I won that Van der Voort, and I'm like, I don't actually know what my U23 options are for next season in terms of rare. It now looks like I may have Van der Voort, Okoye, Tanny, and obviously I've got Chris Brady super rare. I've got a Tanny super rare. I've got Baek Jong-bum, who signed a new contract extension super rare. So that patience paid off, in the sense that I could have easily gone out and spent out at the time. I was looking at maybe like Chevalier or Trubin, who were going to cost me, in excess of £1,000 for a rare. And now that potentially would have been overkill. They would have probably been more solid options, obviously, than what I've got, a little bit more cemented. But I've got a very good chance of next season going in with multiple options at U23. However, the next point I wanted to make, I think that obviously we discussed on the podcast in the last few episodes about those kind of like DMPs in the pool, blah, blah, blah. People getting disappointed with the rewards. I'm pretty sure I've seen Nanzo talk about this, Basil, a few of the other big accounts, bringing light to the fact that U23 pool is still a little bit of an outlier. I think that the U23 prize pool, particularly in like super rare, but also in rare plus, there's a lot of outliers in there, isn't there? There's a lot of dodgy rewards still, and it's kind of putting me off, like bolstering my options in U23. I don't know if at the moment it's worth paying that kind of extra that you pay for that U23 utility that we used to see. It used to be almost like 20-30% more. And then, next season, that when they go to 24, they're not half the price they were. But yeah, I don't know about you, Quinny, but are you looking at U23 as like a viable route of entry at the moment in terms of like where you're putting your cards? Because at the moment, for someone who does have a strong U23 gallery and I considered myself maybe last season as like U23 was my core place in like my lineup builder. Now it's so far down my pecking order, and that's only because there just seems to be so many dodgy rewards getting out, DMP goalkeepers, that kind of thing. That, I've got a lot of them anyway. I don't need any more DMP goalkeepers that I'm waiting to come good. I've got dozens of them in U23. I don't need to win any, and it's put me off a little bit. I don't know about you.
Well, I've got Trubin, so I'm kind of like similar to what I was kind of mentioning earlier. There's some players I'm just unlikely to sell at very many opportunities, if you know what I mean. So I've sold a Van de Voort or two for money. I've sold a Lafont or two for money. A few of these under 23 guys when they've been well priced in the market and whatever. But Trubin's always the one I've kept on with. So with the likes of him, Frimpong, Wirtz, Savio, under 23s I get are kind of by accident. So I kind of like having it as an option, like for some of these cards, like having that eligibility open to them. So it's like, okay, well, I actually fancy the 5 I could cobble together this week, because I was watching Harry Trades' opening at the weekend, the midweek, or it was like, it was opening on Tuesday from the weekend, and he finished 4th in under 23. And the guy that was on the podium in front of him had Josip Stanisic in it, defender, because obviously he was covering in Leverkusen for the guys that went to AFCON.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that happens. That's kind of different in a little respect, because those guys are away in international duty. But those kind of things happen in under 23 every week. There's a random defender in Austria that does 92 that somebody had in their team along with their Veerman and their Lang or whatever. I don't know, and whoever's popping off their Vinnies. So I think under 23 always has that random opportunity where you don't need to have, like, if you have 5 absolute smashing studs of cards, then you can go into it with a lot of confidence. But if you've got like 2 or 3 guys that are like really good, and then you've got 1 or 2 other guys that you just fancy that weekend, but they are good, maybe the fixtures in their favour, their form has been coming up recently, then under 23 is a division that I think you can have a shot at in that regard,
Definitely. I think I'd agree with that, but I just think at the moment, I wonder how many of the sort of like U23 smasher cards are just like not being used there by the owners, and they're being put into cap modes, all-star. I'd love to hear from more.
It's hard to imagine a lot of the Champ Euro ones are hitting that, because like me and Laird were talking about this on the preview show, but like Bellingham is probably hardly ever used in under 23 for the most part, so I think and that's always the situation I've had with Wirtz, where I've never cared that Wirtz is under 23. I would always just have him anyway. I would quite regularly have played him outside of under 23. And it's just that level of guy. I think the Bellingham, Wirtz maybe isn't there at the moment, But like you've been using O'Reilly and Veerman and All-Star very often because they're just above the age group. They're just the best cards in the game-ish, regardless of their age or whatever. So I don't think I see those cards. They're way more thinly spread across divisions than I think some of the other 23. Like Vinnies are probably. Oh, I don't know. Vinny's probably a good example, I suppose, because Real Madrid stacks and whatever champ. It's always good to win cards. But you know what I mean? Like Veerman, there's probably not that many Veermans in Challenger, for instance, compared to like under 23. Under 23 is probably the most common place to find a Veerman or an O'Reilly for the most part, I suppose. But
it was last season. Veerman's like aged out this year, but yeah, definitely last season he was always in U23. I found like in pro, obviously he was overpowered because I had the super rare and there wasn't many of them floating about because of moves he'd made and stuff like that. But I'm just gonna have a quick look now and just compare the impact players tab on Sorare data from last weekend. So obviously it was a really high scoring Champ Euro week. So I'm just gonna have a little look at, like you mentioned Verts, you mentioned obviously Bellingham. So if I go into U23 rare versus Champ Euro rare, the most used or the highest sort of impact player in U23 rare was Verts, closely followed by Geertruida, Costa. I think like goalkeepers, you're all, goalkeepers are a bit different. You're going to avoid using your U23 goalkeeper in Champ because it's a bit unnecessary unless unless they play for like you're better off using like a Neuer or something like that, right? Musiala, 71 uses in U23 rare. If I go into Champ Euro, I just wonder how far down I have to scroll to find, those same players. And actually, hold on, that's a different game week. 4-4-1. Sorry, bear with me. Champ Euro rare. I wonder how many Verts and like we have there. So I'm just going to try and spot a U23 smasher. And actually, it does look like Verts. So in comparison, Verts used in Champ Euro rare last weekend, 38 versus 70 odd in U23. So people who hold like, the Musialas and the Vertses are still using them. Musiala 71 in rare U23 versus 41 in Champ. So that tells us that, people who hold those kind of like high, what would you call it? Like high potential scorers are still using them in U23, which I guess is probably partly why the sentiment is what it is, I guess, for that prize pool. Because if you've got those potential high scorers who can, put a shift in for Champ prizes, which for the most part, I think the Champ Euro pool prizes seem to
Bellingham
deliver. Yeah, I'm just looking for Bellingham. I mean, in Champ rare, let's have a look if I can find Bellingham. Bellingham, so 27 used in Champ. And how many are used? Only 40 in U23 rare. That's interesting. I wonder if that would change in Pro. Let's have a look in Rare Plus and see if anything changes there. Yeah, it's just loading up now. So if we look at the same metric in Rare Plus, you're seeing 24 Bellinghams used in U23. And in Champ, it doesn't look like there's any.
Ooh.
Wait. It's not finding any. So there wasn't a single use last weekend of Jude Bellingham in Champ Rare Plus. That's interesting. What does that tell you? What can you take from that? The fact that there's not a single Jude Bellingham being used in Champ Euro Rare Plus.
I'll probably change this weekend if anyone listens to this podcast.
Yeah, it's true.
Because Real Madrid have got Almeida this weekend, I think. So it's a Jude 100 this weekend.
The most used card in Champ Euro Rare Plus is Kimmich and Mbappe.
So yeah, that's probably the rare mid option, isn't it? It's Kimmich over Bellingham, and then it's super rares around it.
Yeah.
So you're not getting the two rare mids. If you're picking a Kimmich, you're probably keeping the Bellingham for the under 23s. If you're able to play both of these guys, and that's your decision you're making. Interesting. Learn something new.
This is what I think. We were talking a little bit about where to put your cards and stuff like this. I think this is an underrated thing that people maybe overlook a little bit when it comes to selection. It's really interesting to look at, like, if you have one of those like high value cards, trying to put it in a tournament where you're not going to come up against someone else with the same card who might have better XP. It's underrated how much that can help push you up in the prize pools, and it, you know, had me looking at cap 270 as a potential for my buy-in players this weekend. But I think because their scores are so high in their L15, makes it hard to put them all in one cap mode. Even 270, you know, I struggle without using like a DMP player somewhere, or, you know, if you're fortunate enough to have a player coming back from injury who's expected to start, then you're laughing. But in my case, I think the closest thing I got to that at the moment is Van der Beek, who, you know, his L15 is like 35, but he played last week for Frankfurt and he didn't smash it. Let's say that, you know, I think he put up a score of like 38. So you're not really getting that much purchase on that L15. But if he was likely to start smashing, you know, if he was on sets and corners and, you know, puts himself in the box, and who knows, you know, if this weekend he puts up an 80, he'll look really good for like the next sort of cap modes, and that might open up a little bit more. But yeah, really interesting to look at that. And yeah, for me, especially interesting looking at Rare Plus and just seeing how many, particularly Kimmich, is used in that division versus Rare. I mean, that for someone who now holds a Kimmich, that's making me think, oh, you know, maybe I'm better off using him in All-Star, sorry, rather than in Champ, because it looks like a lot of his supplies in there. Nanzo Scoop says, if you have a deep gallery, you're likely to use a player like Kroos in Champ and Bellingham in U23. Yeah, and I guess it depends on like what your focus is, isn't it? Because I think one thing that Champ has over U23 is cash rewards. It pays out the top 30 places, I think. So I think that's another factor. But yeah, really interesting to see that no Bellinghams were used in Rare Plus. Really, I'm actually shocked about that. Surely there's an issue. Maybe there's a bug on the website. There's got to have been someone using him. There's got to have been someone. He's used, you know, he's used a lot in U23 Rare Plus though, but just not Champ. Interesting. Yeah. We'll keep tabs on that the weekend to come. Quinny, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but the big kind of news since we last convened here is we've had a full-blown launch of Sorare Rivals. We haven't got into the crux of it yet. Have you been playing it much? Have you found it? Do you think it's something that you're going to continue playing? And what you kind of like? What's your take on it so far?
I think it's really good. I'm really interested to see how big these win streaks can go, but in terms of end products, you know, I've seen some people get to 3s, and I think some people are trying to still get that 5th one. I think it's quite a hard thing, I suppose, to knock together. But I'm quite excited to have a good go at it. I've not really... So I played it at the weekend. I mentioned we did a kind of prime time. This is what I called the stream kind of watch along thing. We had 3 games on, all kicked off at 5:30. And it was like Man City. Who were Man City playing? Was it Newcastle or Tottenham? I'm losing my mind now. Who were Man City playing?
It was Newcastle, right? Because they
Newcastle.
Behind,
yeah,
right?
It was Newcastle. Yeah. And then we had, I think, Sociedad on one of the tellies, and we had I forget the other one now. It was a German match. Dortmund, maybe? Yeah, Dortmund and Darmstadt. So we had like a lot of different things on the go. And actually, I was listening to Laird and the guys on Data talking about, the common card thing and all the rest of it. Now, I don't know if that's a patch that's happened since last weekend, right? But last weekend, I played those 3 games, right? The Sociedad match, I was covered in super rares, like for the team I was picking. And I was matched up with somebody, I think they had a couple of rares. In the Man City game, I had 2 rares, and I think I was matched up with someone kind of similar. But in the Dortmund game, I had 5 commons. And do you know who I was paired up against? Somebody with 2 limiteds. So it didn't really like hide you. So that might be a wee patch or something that's happened. So I'll be interested to see if that is the case. But one thing that was really good when we were doing the stream, I'll be doing much more of them. I was looking at the weekend. It's actually a nightmare trying to plan when is prime time at the weekend, because the fixtures in terms of kickoff times are all over the place.
Yeah.
But what I think is going to be something that I'm going to be trying to do for some end product on this is like whenever I am cramming football in, because I think if you play Sorare, there's maybe a wee window in the weekend where you're like, right, I'm going to watch this game and I'll maybe pay attention on my phone to this game, or maybe turn your laptop on as well as your telly, whatever you get up to multi-screen. But I think most Sorare players probably get a little chance like that. And that's really where I want to try and focus in on spending my arena tickets and trying to get the win streaks in, because I know some people are just going for the whole, get the lineup in, pick 5, just run it, and hopefully you get a bit of luck and go for it. But I think for me that, it'll work for somebody, it'll work for some people or whatever, I don't know, but it's not going to be me. I'm going to try and get my wins, like I'm going to know. I'm going to know I've got a good chance of, I can see the team. I know the fixture. I'm coming into the weekend ready for it in that respect. I'm just waiting for the team to come out, and then, I see their team as well. Maybe you're listening to some of the analysis on the telly. Maybe you're in the live stream with me or whatever. I don't know. But I think that's the time to play it and go for it, because when I've done my little Rivals videos, I think they'll mainly be out on like Friday or whatever. Not that anyone who's probably listening to this podcast probably cares too much. But it's like, for me, it's the game for people that are watching the match. If you're watching the match, this is the game to be, just have on your phone when you're chilling out with it, chatting with it, or being mad about it like we are, kind of thing. So, because for the Man City game, Ederson gets subbed off in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We were all over that, but that was actually a fantastic dynamic that shook out, because he left the pitch on 30 points, right? Ortega Moreno came onto the pitch with 25, and then as the game shakes out, there's lots of goals conceded. So Dubravka ends up on 42 points, even though, they're not on the good end of the result here. Ortega ended on 27, and Ederson finished on 30 because he didn't concede any of the goals, because he was off the pitch by that point. So there's lots of, I think watching the game is just going to be the difference between some of those games, especially the high profile ones, where other people will be reacting. If you can be one of the guys that reacts, you're going to be getting a win maybe.
Talking about that game particularly, I was watching that and I had a bit of Rivals action going on as well. And so when that actually happened and Ederson come off injured, I don't know about you, but I was trying to figure out, right, can I make a substitution then? Can I bring on Ortega in the hope that, like he keeps the clean sheet, because then he'll outscore thing. But the way it looks to me, correct me if I'm wrong, is you cannot make a substitution for a player that's dropped once they're in the field. You can only do it like preemptively, like you're taking a gamble on.
You need to see he's about to. You can't have the notification. If you get the notification, it's too late. You need to see Ederson. They're doing this. They're doing this. They're doing this, guys. They're doing this. Get them done. Sub. That was it.
I made a substitute. I made a good substitution in that game. I had Kovacic playing, who was actually scoring okay, but at the time, De Bruyne's warming up on the sidelines. I'm like, do you know what? If De Bruyne comes in for half an hour, I think he outscored the 38 that I think Kovacic was on at the time. I don't know what Kovacic finished on in the end, but obviously I made the substitution. So you kind of sacrifice the 38 odd points or whatever it is, and any of the passes that go towards the bonus, I think, right? So I think I had Tiki Taka as the bonus, like the booster. So when I subbed out Kovacic, I'm pretty sure you lose the points he scored, and I'd imagine, I'm not sure of this, but I'd imagine you lose the passes he's made as well towards your bonus. So I put myself behind in my arena match at that point. But then obviously De Bruyne came on and smashed it, and managed to, I think I still lost the arena in the end slightly. But yeah, I think one of the things that maybe isn't that the substitution side of it is a little bit under explained. I think there should be a little bit more content or explanation around how and when you can use substitutions, or just they should just scrap it altogether, and people should just be like, right, if you want to put De Bruyne in your team, put him in, but know that he's starting on the bench, and just accept that you're gambling with a player scoring a 0 unless they come in. So yeah, I guess that's the point, right? You're trying to watch the game, you're trying to pick out a substitution, you've got to try and beat it. So that needs to be maybe communicated a little bit more. The other thing was tactics. Let's talk about the tactics side of it. We have options of, I believe, is it 5 different sort of tactics? Let me just go into Rivals and remind myself exactly.
I think the tactics really do put pressure on you to have a real think about how the game is going to knock out.
Definitely.
Will your guys, one contest is one of my favorite ones, because when the beta, I had a lot of success with picking wingers and just doing the Jogger Benito, because if you can get 2 wingers into your team and a fullback that that likes a bit of it as well, then a couple of dribbles each over the match, it's not, it's not that mad to imagine, for example. So I think you really need to know, like, you'll have a sense of the players that you're picking, like, oh, this guy's a winger, a fullback, a centre mid. But even the match, will the opponent give them space to run into? Or is this going to be a mad duel fest where they're going to be much more, everyone's in the middle of the pitch, shoulder to shoulder, the ball's turning over all the time? Or, depending on what cards you're picking, maybe you're picking limiteds and rares, you're picking a bit of an underdog, a differential because you own them. Are you picking the effective clearance thing? Are they backs against the wall? I don't see anyone picking that effective clearance thing very often, if ever, to be honest with you. But I think you really need to know how the game's going to actually pan out.
Definitely. I think, like you said, I think I was talking to your fair about that. The clearance one is a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Because I think the only time you're going to back a team to clear the ball a lot is when you're backing a team that are like defending for their lives the whole game. And in which case, why would you back the team that is likely to be defending for their lives? Right? The idea tactically behind this is you back the team you think is going to win, or you back the team, or you back the players if it's going to be a tight, well-contested game. You think, right, which midfielders are going to win the most duels? Which defenders are going to win the most duels? Who might keep a clean sheet if it's going to be close? I'm looking, like, now while I'm sort of talking about this, I'm looking at the Ivory Coast Nigeria game, which is coming up, and that is a game where I think you can pick a mix of the two, because it could be goals from both sides. Home nation versus like some of the best players in the tournament, and that is a game where maybe there'll be a lot more differential between who. Whereas most of the time, if you pick the right team and you pick the right players, you're going to win most of your matchups. But in a game like this, where I think like there'll be a little bit more differential between people's selections, it could be a little bit more of an interesting or hard. I think you go into the fixtures knowing, like, everyone's picked this lineup, everyone's going to go heavy Morocco, everyone's going to go heavy this or whatever. So I think it's an interesting product. I like it, but yeah, I think that some of those tactics are almost like, when will you ever pick park the bus or something like that, right? It's hard, but like you said, you need to know, you need to be watching the game, you need to kind of have a bit of foresight. Maybe if it's a team that you watch, but one of the things since the beta, where I might be wrong, I'm pretty sure I never saw it during the beta, but when you do select your tactic, it kind of gives you an overview of like the average, and I think that's really useful.
I don't know what the average is, but is it average on L15, L5?
It always feels low to me, because I'll look at it and I'll be like, my team is going to outperform that 100% every time. I'm like, 90% of the time I pick duels, and it'll be like, I'll get told that, like, oh, on average your team puts up like 5 duels won, and you're like, no chance. They're gonna make 12 at least, and yeah, so like that's been playing in a little bit, but I think that helps, isn't it? If this is the game that helps people figure out how to score and what things score what, then it does that, definitely. One other thing I will mention, because you touched on it as well, is I'm actually almost actively avoiding putting any of my pro cards into my lineups. I don't know about you, but it's like the times I do, I'm just getting matched up with people who've got like 5 limiteds, and like if I've only got 1 rare, playing against a team of 5 limiteds is almost impossible. So I think they need to find the sweet spot for that, because if the point of this is to try and entice people into buying pro cards, then you need to make them playable. And at the moment, it's like, I don't want to compete with someone who's got a full lineup of pro cards.
Yeah, but I don't really buy into that either, because I think, again, still, when it is mano a mano, head to head, from the little I've played it a bit more in the beta, but you still need to have the best 5 guys.
Yeah,
the tactics do play a big part in it. The tactics are probably the most understated part of it all. But I don't think going common versus someone, like, then the only differential really is probably the tactics, because you probably get the same captain as well.
Yeah.
And it is just then, what did you pick for your tactics? If it is that case, if it is anything goes, all the rest. So, like, I know people are scared of bumping into people with supers and uniques and all the rest of it, but I've made decisions in pro already where I'm picking these guys, and I know they're not the best shout, but I'm going to anyway, because the bonus might make up for it. It might even make the difference overall. And that suboptimal decision making that will come into more people's play, I think, gives you more opportunity than not if you can if you can stay a wee bit more sober to it and pick the forward you should pick and not the forward you own, kind of thing, and actually play it. That's one thing I've really enjoyed with, I forget what match it was, but see, being able to have like the full stack and go, oh, brilliant. I know they're just going to rinse this team and like, let's just see who I get paired up with. Maybe I've got a few of the cards already, but the cards I don't own, I can add into it and go, wow, this is a power stack. I can see this kicking, you know? So I don't buy that personally.
Yeah, I think I had like maybe one fixture where I had a full lineup of cards, but it was mixed between the two teams. It wasn't like a full stack. But yeah, I mean, I found with some, I think I was one of the games I had Senegal versus Gambia, and I had like Koulibaly rare, but on the other side I had a Collie super rare, and I thought I could put this Collie super rare in, thinking that that might be better than just playing a common from the Senegalese team. And it turns out it was a bad move because I got then paired with people who've got full stacks of players. And so, yeah, like it might be a backwards tactic, but I've been actively telling people to avoid putting any of your pro cards in at the moment. If you're trying to win on a streak, just pick the best players. So unless your card is...
By the way, Stish, sorry to interrupt you there, but I just seen somebody in the chat saying, I think the streak rewards have gone. And I just went to look and I don't see the wee bar for it on the screen anymore.
Interesting. So it was before, it would have been in like your my club, and then
Your
I guess
Rivals history.
Rivals history. Okay, I was looking at where is it? Oh, it seems to have gone. Yeah. You know, like your manager score or your level or whatever it is. Oh, there. Okay, see Rivals history. So mine still says win. So I've got to win one more to claim a Rivals box for 3 consecutive matches. I don't have an open claim, but it says 2 out of 3, so I can still win a third one. But then maybe beyond that, yeah, I don't know. Interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on that later then, because if I do win my next arena match, then I should be able to. But someone else in the chat saying it's in missions now in Rivals.
Missions tab, got you.
I can't see the missions tab. Challenges.
Challenges, maybe?
I'm in challenges, and if I go into like
Tactician? No.
Let's have a look. Oh yeah, so if I go into the unrivaled tab on challenges, my manager thing, it's like one to watch, apprentice. Let's see, tactician, common, pro, limited. Where is it then? Beginner, unrivaled. It rivals reputations. Yeah, I can't see.
Yeah, when I'm in Rivals history, it's not there for me.
Good form, win 3 consecutive arena matches. If I go into that, it just says there. But yeah, if I look at it on the Rivals side, it still looks like I've got a claim potentially. But there, interesting then. So if I need to try and make sure I win the next arena award, and then can figure out if it's still going to work or not. Then but that's interesting. I wonder why, if that is the case. I wonder if they think people are botting it or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to see some stats on it. It'd be really interesting to see how many sort of new users they've signed up who come to play. And then obviously the next one is like how many of them are buying card rewards. But one thing I will say is I looked at a couple of cards on the market today. I was listing up.
I found the Rivals tab.
You got it, yeah?
Tab. I found it. It's just moved.
Yeah. So in the marketplace at the moment, I've noticed that a few of the cards I was looking at, they're kind of like current price and stuff like that. Quite a few of the cards or the players' cards on their tab said that people have been buying them in the, like the instant buy. I hadn't seen that for a little while. So I wonder if there's been an uptick in instant purchases from people who are new to the game, who are coming into it from Rivals, because every time you submit a team, it gives you that option to like upgrade, doesn't it? And I wonder what they're kind of like, what would you call that? The conversion rate of new user to like paying user. I wonder if it's helping. Be really interested to see some figures on that. Whether or not we'll get them, I'm skeptical, but I'd love to see that. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Be really interesting.
They did a little cosmetic update on the club as well, where you can like change free stats that that appear on your manager ID, and I think they're probably 3 of the worst things they could have. That they're all terrible. Like it's
Oh
just
right, I see it now. My
like
statistics. You can
yeah. So
choose
click
what
the edit
ones.
button at the top right there, and then you'll see the 3. It says my statistics, and there's 3 drop down menus. They're all
Yeah,
kind of rubbish. It's quite rivals intense, and
it
for me,
is,
I've not
isn't
been
it?
playing that much, so there's not much to brag about yet. But otherwise, it's like cards owned and cards won,
Collection score.
collection score, like total amount combined, obviously.
Yeah, like
Followers, reputation, win streak, games played.
I'd like
I
to.
want
I'd like to.
podiums. I want
Yeah,
trophies.
that's what I was gonna say. What
You know
about
what I
you?
mean?
Where's my trophies? Where's my gold trophies, silver trophies,
First
bronze?
places, second places, something like
That's
that.
all I want. Yeah,
Podiums,
I
top
want first,
50,
second, and
top
third places.
100.
Exactly that. Yeah, yeah. That is random. Cards won, games played. That's obviously rivals. Highest reputation. Signed up. I mean, that's probably the most interesting one I've got. Signed up.
But that
Cards.
all that information is just above it. See if you look at the other information on your manager ID, the sign
Yeah,
up date's already there.
yeah.
So is your followers, and so is something else. There's like 3 things that are already on it.
Very strange.
Or is it 2?
Maybe that's more like they've just updated the sort of user interface, but they need to give us more options than that. I mean, I just want gold, silver, and bronze rewards probably, or
I even like no, but that's not for everyone. But like, how many times have you finished in the top 100 in All Star
yeah,
Rare or whatever?
or
You
most
know,
played competition stuff like that, like
yeah,
where you know most likely to play.
like every division, maybe like a top, like a wee marker for every division. Like how many times you've broke the top? If it's
Well, I
limited,
suppose,
maybe
yeah,
1,000.
I
You
don't.
know,
I don't qualify for a collection score like badge. So for me, it might be like highest collection bonus, like club. In my case, I think it would be like Betis or something like that. Like just like I'm surprised there's nothing like that. Like what club do you have the most cards of, or
yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah, even things like let's have a look. Like, oh no, your social media is still there. Just seeing that now. Signed up followers, cards owned. Yeah, really unusual. Yeah, I'm sure that'll get tweaked. Goalkeepers one for me. Yeah, Snake Hip says I should have a goalkeepers one stat. That would be quite an interesting one. I know it's a lot. I know it's definitely a lot. But yeah, as we said, I don't mind winning a goalkeeper if it means I can cash in on them, or if it opens up a new tournament like Quinny's did. So yeah, I'll take a super rare goalkeeper win. I don't think I've had one of those just yet. Maybe that's the 2024 aim for me. Win a super rare goalkeeper. But on the subject of super rare rewards, I mean they've been lambasted online, haven't they? Seen some really weird rewards in the super rare divisions at the moment. People are getting a little bit peeved with that. It's kind of put me off a little bit, if I'm honest, entering the super rare divisions. But I do enjoy winning a super rare because you've got that scarcity. And on the subject of super rares, Nicholas Kuhn, talk to me, Quinny. Is he going to be a superstar for Celtic, or is he someone I need to sell the hype on?
If I was you, mate, I'd hang on to that probably quite tightly, especially having that O'Reilly in your club as well, both under 23.
Mm.
You get the forwards, Kuhn, as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Does have forwards and mids. I don't know what the difference will be. Mids, forward probably better. He's going to be. I think he's going to be taking over for Abada. I did a video on the Celts Are Here channel about where I think he kind of comes into the squad and all that kind of thing. So if anyone's into a more detailed kind of breakdown, feel free to check that out. But I think he comes in. Depends how good he is if he stays in, right? But I think he'll come in to replace Abada. I think we're now probably looking to sell Abada this window. There was a rumor about a week ago that we're trying to loan him in this window because no one was willing to buy him, like loan obligation or loan with a buy clause or something. So I think Abada will go, and I think Kuhn's going to come in his place. And that's the idea. I think that's the idea, certainly, anyway. This whole Israel-Palestine thing, and, I'm not going to go into that, but, like, there's no way Abada stays at Celtic for me. The club and everyone else around the club is trying to kid on, I think, that they can keep him for the rest of the season. It's just not going to happen. Like, I don't see it. We'll see what happens, what do I know? But, like, I just don't see it. So I think Kuhn is in a great position, mate, for a January transfer. It's a great one that you've landed on. Like, you won him a few months ago, I think.
Yeah.
And Juma is moving to Leon. It's a good wee you know, that's the thing, like you say with the supers, like if you can ride a January window well, like some of these tier 3s or tier 4s can be worth hanging on to.
I've been sort of like going into the Sorare based website.
I don't know what Kuhn would have been. He might have been even a tier 2, depending on when you won him. He's had
I think he was. He was quite useful. It was good for me because I kind of needed a challenger forward option there. I was like running a bit thin when Russia had stopped, if I remember rightly. It was around that time.
Yeah.
And he put up some decent scores, and then he's gone a little bit cold in the last couple of fixtures. And then obviously they had the winter break. So the move to Celtic also means that I get use of him a bit quicker as well. So yeah, it was. I actually had him listed when like that first bit of news came away. You messaged me, didn't you? You were like,
yeah.
And then I thought straight away, I'm like, take him down because I think I had him listed for like 300 quid, which you know, it's probably
it was. I don't know what money, but quarter of an ETH.
It was like, it was he's probably worth a bit more now that move's gone ahead. But I do think at the moment he's more of a hold than a sell for me, based on what I've seen and read. And obviously, nice to hear you kind of agree with that. And McBride's messaged me about him and stuff like that. So yeah, I think quite excited to see if he becomes a fruit bearer for the gallery. But I've been using the Sorare base website, sorarebase.football, and you can search for your manager name. And then if you go into like the Mercato tab, you can see any moves that your players have made. And so his was just made like official on the Sorare platform on the 16th. But yeah, like talking of like, you know, like some of those transfers, you can ride the wave. It's quite good to look back at like what cards in your gallery you might have completely missed. A really nice one. I'm going to pick a couple out here from mine. One that kind of went under the radar for me was Mohamed Ali Cho, who moved from Sociedad to OGC Nice. I think that's a really interesting potential move for my gallery. He was a card I picked up because I like the look of him. You know, he shows a lot of promise, but I think that maybe he just wasn't going to break it through into that Sociedad side anytime soon. So keen to see if he can make the grade at Nice. So they are going to be watching that quite closely. It'd be nice to see if his scores pick up. But another really interesting one for me was Kamil Piatkowski moving from Salzburg to Granada. I think that's a good move. He's already gone straight into the starting lineup last weekend and put up, you know, one of his regular kind of like 60 plus defensive scores. So hoping that he becomes really useful for U23. Really been surprised that he didn't get the kind of like the run of the draw at Salzburg. He's always done well when they've you know, they've had injuries and he's had to fill in. But I think he wanted to leave last season. He wanted to stay at Ghent and they wouldn't let him. So him at Granada, to see him in there putting up a big score in his first game, really nice to see. Another one that really went under the radar, though, I'm not sure if this is probably a really bad move for SO5, but Lautaro Giannetti from Vélez to Udinese was a really random one for me. That one, just out of nowhere. I was doing my lineup builder and it was like, why is he available this week? And then I noticed he'd moved clubs and he's gone to Italy. So it'd be interesting to see if he becomes of any use to me. But Quinny, have you had any like random, unexpected moves in your gallery?
Well, I wouldn't say it's in my gallery, but as soon as I seen it happening, I jumped on it. I got myself a Timo Werner super rare for about a quarter of an Ethereum as well. As soon as I seen that it was going to be joining Ange, like I'm a huge Timo Werner fan, as maybe some regular followers will know. And obviously Ange, I know Ange Ball. I know both of them very well, and I just see it being an absolute hit. So as soon as I seen that being a rumor that was like looking likely, I just took the plunge with it. So that's one that springs to mind, but I wouldn't really say it's within the gallery as such. And I don't really think, other than obviously we mentioned the Danjuma thing, I don't think I've got any like proper like legacy Barcelona cards that have like moved in this or are going to move in this window, particularly, to be honest with you. I think, yeah, it's just some of those kind of newer guys, those newer faces, maybe get a wee bit of traction around them. Actually, looks like this morning that Daichi Kamada is going to be leaving Lazio on loan for Galatasaray. Would you believe? So maybe that happens. Maybe that's fun for me. But yeah, there's nothing else really that I don't think it's happened for me this window.
Yeah, the only other ones I can see are like a couple of my sort of bench warmers that have moved to uncovered teams on loan. So I've got Calvin Ratzi, who is the EP81 Dutch goalkeeper. He's gone to play for Roda JC, who are riding high in the second tier of Dutch football. So, you know, who knows? He might, if he does well there, he might get himself a permanent move, and if hopefully they might get promoted at the end of the season. So there's that. And then other than that, I've seen like Fabio Blanco, who I like backed massively when he moved to Frankfurt from Barcelona and then back. He moved from Las Palmas, I think, if I remember rightly. Anyway, long story short, he went to Villarreal B in the closed season, and I was like, I'm getting on this kid. He looks like a wonder kid. He should do really well in the second tier of Spanish football. And he's just not. I think he's come off the bench once all season. So they've loaned him out to the third tier. But it's only a loan, so I'll be keeping an eye on. So hopefully he gets some minutes. But yeah, interesting. Obviously Sancho as well. We obviously know he's made a move. I've still got him in my gallery. So I'll be hoping he does well. Be interesting to see if he can cement his place in the starting lineup. But I think for the next few weeks, we expect him to be coming in off the bench, getting him match fit, and kind of reintegrating him that way. So I think he might be a really useful card, especially for U23 as a forward in the coming weeks, if that looks like a viable option. Obviously, we've spoken about that earlier, but yeah, keen for all these leagues to start opening back up. Super keen for J League and K League to start again next month.
Last week of the European winter break, and then we get into the spring of just madness, you know. So it's it's a nice week and a last portion of, I know it's the first episode of the podcast we've done for 2024. I'd probably say Happy New Year to everyone else at this point, since we didn't do it at the beginning. But like, I think we're coming out of that kind of slumber, and like, I've got a couple of teams going out this weekend. So do you? I know a lot of the regular viewers and listeners of the show got lots of cards in Asia and America and lots of these other places, and along with rivals as well, because it's going to be covering all these games as well. It'll be really interesting to see just how mad it does get through February, March, April, May, that kind of 4-month window of everything being to play for in every division. So yeah, nice kind of end to the winter break with some of these January moves. I also had another one in my gallery there that is one I bought on a move, which I've not really been buying transfer rumours outside of Celtic for a few years, so I've had a bit of fun with this one. But Geraldo Becker has moved from Union Berlin to Real Sociedad, and as soon as I seen that, I got mad hyped about that and picked up his rare. His rare was really cheap. There wasn't any cheap super rares, but as soon as I seen that, I just thought this is like them finally replacing Alexander Isak properly. I've tried to get a few forwards into that team, and none of them have really happened yet. So I think Becker's good, and I think he'll, at 28, coming from the Bundesliga, I think he'll probably be a real La Liga power forward there. So just another one that was on my screen I thought I'd mention.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see who of these kind of like January transfers starts to really like heat things up right from the off. And for all we know, we could have the next SO5 monster on our hands somewhere. Fingers crossed for anyone who is holding that next monster. Quinny, it's been a pleasure, mate. I think we've just rolled over that hour mark, which is always that kind of sweet spot, isn't it? So mate, it's been a pleasure. Good luck the weekend. And to all our listeners as well, as you said, like, good luck, everyone. And and Happy New Year, as Quinny mentioned. Should have said that at the beginning. But we'll see you all again, same time, same place next week. Cheers, everyone.
Oh.